Hello, my name is Kelly Bluen. Welcome to my mini mandala series. In these videos, I show you how to make a mini mandala using very few tools. So all you need is something to write with and something to write on. I am using a micron pen. I have a pencil to do some drawing and some shading at the end, and I have a little paper blending tool called a tortillon. I also always start with a coin. This is a penny. And then I've got my 5-inch sketchbook. You do not need special paper for this. Anything you have will work. And then I've got a piece of scrap paper because I like to use it as a little ruler without actually having to have a ruler on hand. Okay, let's get started. So I'm going to go ahead and trace this coin, and this time I'm going to use my pencil. Sometimes we start right away with pen, sometimes pencil. It just depends on what we're doing. All right, so we get our little circle started, and then we're going to draw a grid. So to make this grid, I divide the circle in half with a horizontal line, and I bring it out both sides. Then I do a vertical line. And I'm doing this nice and light so that I can erase it if I need to, or I can change it or move it. And then I do a cross section. So I divide each of these corners in half. And that looks pretty good. I just check to see if these are about the same width apart. And if not, I can easily adjust my line if I need to. Okay, now I am going to use my little scrap paper because I want to make an outer circle, and I want it to be about 2 pencil widths out. So I'm just going to pick a spot. And I make a little mark on my scrap paper, and then I make a little mark on that line. And I go around, and I put my scrap paper at the edge of the circle. I don't go into the middle, because sometimes our middles are off a little bit. So go to the edge of the circle, and I make these little hash marks all the way around. The reason I don't use a ruler is because I don't always have a ruler with me. So if I'm on an airplane, or I'm on vacation, or I'm camping, or I'm out to dinner, anytime I feel like making a little mandala, as long as I have paper and pencil, I can create one. I don't need the fancy tools. Okay, now I'm going to connect these by making just the slightest rounded line. And I'm continuing around, connecting those little hash marks. Is it perfect? No, and that is okay. Could fix it a little if we want. All right, so there's our mandala grid. Nice and simple. We don't have too many lines. It's not complicated or overly detailed. And I'm going to pick up my pen and get started. So I'm going to begin by making a smaller circle on the very center, like that. And now I'm going to take each of these little sections and I'm going to put the letter U. So just a curve. And I want it to, I don't want to go straight down here and then up. I want to come in a little bit and then up. It's almost more like a V, I guess. The bottom is a little bit rounded, but not too much. And what I want is these little spokes coming out. So I like these little lines. Like a little sunshine. In the center, I'm going to draw another circle and I'm going to ink it in. It can be as large or as small as you'd like. Okay. All right, and now I'm going to put a bump. The bump is like my favorite thing to use in a mandala. It's just a curved line, and I'm going to connect not quite halfway up, but it doesn't really matter. But I'm going to put a bump from one spoke to the other, nice and round. Some of these will be wider than others depending on how you made your grid, and again, it's okay. We're not looking for perfection. And I'm going to go from that center area, I'm going to make a line out to the edge of that circle, and then I'm going to add a smaller circle on top. Out to the edge, add a smaller circle, out to that line, add a little circle. It's amazing how many variations there are of things that you can make in such a small area, using straight lines, curves, and circles. Look how cute that is. Okay, now I'm going to go back to these bumps and I'm going to add another thinner bump to each side. And if you've taken my mandala classes before, you know that all of these are just suggestions. If you feel inspired to make a really wide bump or something else, like go right ahead. These are just meant to be a guide to get you started making your own. So you don't have to make exactly what I make. Okay, so now here's how we're going to use this outer circle. So we're gonna make a shape. Let me put one on the bottom here. We're gonna make a shape. This is one I don't use very often in my online videos because it's a little bit tricky to get the feel for it. So it's a bump up to a point and then back down. And mine always turn out a little bit crooked and I don't mind that. So here's one idea, is that we could do two little curves and then come down. That might make it a little more even for you. Or if you're not comfortable doing any of that, you can always go to this kind of a petal. Okay, so a couple of options. So I think I'm going to try the method of putting these little toppers on. So on each of these lines, I'm going to put a little curve down on each side of the line. Curve, curve. This is just going to help keep the top of my petal straight. It's not going to mean that I make the rest of it perfectly, but it does give it a little more consistency. I've made those kind of petals so many times, and every time, I don't know if I go too quickly or what happens or I get too confident, but they all end up a little bit wonky. Okay, so now I want to go to the center of each of these bump outs. So I'm going to curve down to that one and curve down to that one. That one and that one. I'm just going to that center by curving down. See how that works? Not too bad. Okay, now inside each of these petals, there are many things that you can do. So if you have a favorite pattern, go ahead and put that in there. What I'm going to do today is these rounded little loops. I'm coming up pretty high. I'm not touching the top, but I do want to take up space in there. I don't want them to be too small. I love it. So even at this point, there are lots of things that you can do to fill in the rest of that pattern. So typically I make like 2 more little loops and that looks beautiful. So you can do that if you want. But just to change things up today, I'm going to put in just some little circles. 1, 2, 1 on top, and then 2 on the side. One of my goals when I teach these videos is to give you lots of new options. So when I draw mandalas for myself in my little notebook, or if I'm in a meeting and I'm just kind of doodling, I tend to go to the same shapes over and over again. And a lot of my mandalas look the same. So when you take these classes from me, I don't want you to get the same mandalas over and over and over again. My hope is that I'm giving you variations each time, and they might not be the best option, but it's just a reminder that you can simply put dots in and it'll look amazing. And if you don't want to do the dots, you don't have to do them. And then because I put these lines in the center with the circles on top, I'm going to do a little line with a dot on top. I could do an empty circle, but there's not much room in there, so I'm just going to fill it in. I love it. Okay, so like I mentioned, I always want to offer you something different. So if I was making this, I might just go to those little rainbow bumps to kind of even these out and sort of call it quits there. But I want to stretch our thinking a little bit. I want to think of different things that we can do. So I want to go back to that initial line that we made, these little kind of rounded V shapes, these little spikes. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down the curve of this petal, go up into a spike, and come down on this side. I'm not going to draw a line around here to make them all even, but you definitely can. I'm just going to wing it. So I'm going to come down, make a spike, and then come down. And I'm trying to envision the center of, where this would come out. I don't want my spike to end up over here, over here. I want it to be in the center as much as possible. Down and out, down and out. I love repeating things that we did in the beginning back out here. I just feel like it gives it a little bit of consistency, maybe. I'm not sure. Okay, and then inside each of these, I'm going to do a line with that empty circle. You're welcome to do whatever you want. but I just want to repeat what I did in the beginning. And if we repeat a line or a pattern we did in the beginning, then we don't have to spend too much energy trying to be creative and think of something completely new to add to the outside. We don't have to think about that. Okay, so now at the top of each of these petals, I'm going to kind of even this out by putting a large dot, a medium dot, and a little dot. So I'm going to do at the end of this petal a larger dot, a medium dot, and a little dot. I also, as I work around, I go around and I kind of fix lines with my pen. So if I want a better point on something, you know, if I've got an edge that looks a little bit chunky or funny, I can kind of fix it. Look how cool that looks. And then to finish this off, I'm going to do something to these little points that came up. So I'm going to add a larger circle up here and color it in. And then I'm going to aura, I'm going to start at this top here and come down and just give these another little layer. So I'm putting this large circle up here. And these match that center. I like how we've got the center large dot and one out here, and then I'm just coming down and up just to give it a little ribbon feel. It's not a lot more detail, but every time we add a line, it adds a little bit more interest. And that's all I'm going to do as far as the drawing. I will add some shading, but I'm going to stop the drawing there. So a lot of times my mandalas end, you know, by connecting things and making it sort of a round circular mandala. I don't usually end in a spiky look, but I like to challenge myself to just make it look completely different than something else I've ever done. And so I really like how this turned out. And of course, you can keep adding layers. You can continue out if you would like, but I'm going to stop there. So I'm going to initial my work. And then I'm going to do some shading, which completely changes how this looks. So before I shade, I have an eraser, and I'm going to erase some of these pencil lines. I don't always erase my lines because I don't usually care if they are there, but I want to erase this circle in the middle. That circle that we traced around the coin. Because we started with that coin, and now it's gone, and you can't even tell that we ever started with a circle in the first place. And I love how that transformed. Okay, I'm going to pick up my pencil to do some shading. And I'm going to start by shading right on top of these little V shapes. Those little curved U's or V's that we made in the beginning. I pick up my little blending tool and I just soften those up that little petal a little bit. And you can already see how that is transforming our mandala. Doesn't that look amazing? Okay, now I'm going to go on this outside bump of petals here. I'm going to put it all the way around. I tend to shade quickly, so feel free to pause the video if you need a little bit more time. And then I'm going to push that up into that layer of petals. So I'm basically pulling that graphite away from that center and pushing it up. And look at how that's starting to layer. That this little flower shape in the center looks like it's hovering above these ones. So inside these, I am going to put a little bit of graphite around these loops. There's already graphite on that petal, so this part isn't necessary, but I just want those to have their own little shadow. It's not much, but I do think it adds another small layer of depth. I love it. Okay, now we've got this outer area here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add graphite all around these little kind of diamond shapes we ended up with. And then I'll blend that in so you can see what that looks like. I keep the center white, but that little shadow makes it look less flat. So you don't need a lot of graphite. I think that's so pretty. Just add that one little line of graphite, and that gives plenty of shadow. And my last one. I think it's absolutely beautiful. All right, so as always, initial your work. At the bottom, I always write the date, and then I write something that's going on in my life this week. So when I think back or I look back at a mandala, I don't always look at this and go, oh, that's the week I was, going back to work or I was camping or whatever. But then I read my little journal entry and I go, oh yeah, that's what I was thinking about. That was what was going on in my life or my family's lives. And I just love having a little 1 or 2 sentence journal entry. Nice little keepsake. So I hope you enjoyed that. Please remember to like and subscribe. And thank you for following. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.